Are you ready to supercharge your memory and ace your exams? I'm Alec Palmerton, and I'm proof that Anki can take your memory from so-so to superb. I scored in the top 0.1% on my medical boards and matched at Harvard. In this step-by-step guide, we'll cover everything you need to get started with Anki, from downloading the app to making and reviewing your first flashcard. Let's jump in. The first thing you're going to do to set up Anki is you have to download it. I recommend using the desktop version because in general, it gives you the full functionality, and you can use the other versions, like you can use phone versions or you can use Anki Web, but generally it's, I think, most convenient to make cards on the desktop app and oftentimes to review cards on the desktop app as well. You can have the other things available to you. You can set them up later. The first thing you'll do is you'll go to apps.ankiweb.net and you're going to click on download. And so when you go to download, you're going to choose the version that is most applicable to you. And so in this case, I will choose the Apple Silicon. And so I will download this and then wait for it to download and then just basically go through the process of installing the app. Obviously for Windows or Linux, it's going to be specific to that particular operating system. Okay, so I'm going to open up this. I'm going to move Anki to the applications folder, and then I'm going to get started. So I will go to applications and then open the app. All right, so I'm going to set this up as if this is the first time that I'm going to set it up. So I'm going to add a new user. We're going to call this test. And so you just go to open. And then once you have that, we're going to talk about creating your first deck. Anki starts with a deck called default, which honestly is totally fine for you to use. The thing that I will show you is that if you want to break your cards into different subjects, you can do that. And so for example, if I'm studying for medical school, and let's say that I'm studying cardiology, I could make a cardiology deck, and then I could make a respiratory deck, and then I could make a, say, renal deck. Okay. And so then I could call this medical school. And if I wanted to, I can actually organize them underneath this particular deck. So if I wanted to keep everything separate, I can do that. And the way that you do that is really you just drag it under that particular deck, and it now becomes a part of this larger deck. The benefits of doing this would be that you can keep all of your topics separate, which is beneficial. So the benefits of having one large deck is that it will randomize the reviews. So for example, if you have cardiology cards and renal cards and respiratory cards, it will show them to you in random order. It's harder for sharing, and it's harder for finding the particular cards of a particular subject, because while you can tag them with, say, cardiology tag or renal tag or something like that, it won't be within its own subject. On the other hand, from an organization or sharing standpoint, creating subdecks can be more beneficial. When you review the cards, it'll show it to you in the order in which the subdecks are arranged. So in other words, I would do all of my cardiology cards first, and then I would do all of my renal cards, and then I would do all of my respiratory cards. If you want those things to be together, then that can be really beneficial. Personally, I prefer to have just one deck that doesn't have a lot of subdecks, although when I share cards, I typically share them as subdecks because it's a lot easier to understand the organization of them. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you how to make your first flashcard in Anki. So to start, you're going to hit add at the top of the menu. And so there's a couple ways that you can do this. So the first thing that you're going to look at is actually the type of flashcard. I personally prefer the basic with optional reverse card. The reason being it adds a little bit of flexibility because it'll give you the choice of making the backside the question and then the front side the answer. So for example, if you wanted to say something like capital of France, right, and then Paris, right, you could say, if it was a regular card, this would be the question, and then this would be the answer. If you have a reverse card, what it would show you is actually the back first. So all it would show you is Paris, and then the answer would be capital of France. And so you can see how that would be actually a useful option for certainly some kinds of information where you might have to know the information in both directions, meaning I might have to know first, hey, what's the capital of France? But I also might need to know that Paris is the capital of France. All right, so the next thing that I want to talk about is how to make the most useful kinds of flashcards. And so a typical flashcard that you're going to see is going to look something like this. It would be like, what is the presentation of an epidural hematoma? And in the back, I'm actually going to take the first aid description from one of the versions of first aid, and I'm just going to show you what sort of is typically seen in a flashcard like this. And so just to show you, so for example, this would be what I would use possibly for the back. Okay, so this would be, so say that would be the presentation, might present with transient loss of consciousness, recovery where there's a lucid interval, and then rapid deterioration due to hematoma expansion. How can we make this better? Now, there's a couple ways that we can make our flashcards better. The first is what we call using a hyphen. So a hyphen allows you to be like this. I would use a hyphen here. So I would take the topic and I'd put it here, and I would put simply the question that I'm asking afterwards. Okay, so already you can see that it's much more clear what I'm asking. I'm saying epidural hematoma presentation. Not only is it shorter, but it's also more clear, which when you're doing maybe 5 or 10 flashcards in a day won't make that much of a difference. But now imagine doing hundreds of flashcards per day, every single day, which at my peak, that was what I was doing. The small differences in time that it takes you to read your card makes a huge difference overall. Okay, so the first tip that you can use is to use what we call a hyphen. The second tip that you can do is actually to try to combine facts together that are logically related. And so for this, let's say we've got epidural hematoma. Right, another thing that someone might do would be to say something like this. Epidural hematoma, this would be one card. So for example, the front of the card might be something like this. And then I would hit add here at the bottom. And if I want, so that this would be the back. Okay. And so if I wanted to add a reverse card, I could just type Y for yes here, and then I would just put a condition. So that way, let me show you what this would look like. I would hit add, and then if I look at this card, I can see, if I preview it, we've got the front of the card says epidural hematoma presentation, and the back would show you might present with transient loss of consciousness, recovery, lucid interval, rapid deterioration due to hematoma expansion, and then it would say condition, right? But we would know that that was not relevant for the answer. This was actually just for the reverse card. And then if I saw the reverse card, it would be this, right? It shows me the presentation of the condition, and then it just prompts me to ask what the condition is. And so again, for a lot of topics, this ability to add reverse cards is very, very useful. Okay, so the second tip that we just discussed is how to add reverse cards. Now, the next tip that I want to discuss is one that actually can make a big difference in the number of cards that you're doing and the depth of learning that you have for those topics. This involves making logical connections between the different facts that you're putting into your flashcards. So we already said before, we've got epidural hematoma, and then we also have, we can say presentation, or we could say epidural hematoma, we can say, oopsies, presentation, or we would say epidural hematoma, we could say pathophysiology. But what if instead we said something like this? We said epidural hematoma, use the pathophysiology to explain the presentation. This is the kind of card that we teach in our program, which helps people to not only understand things at a deeper level, but also to basically have the number of cards that they need to make because they're connecting relevant things together. So as an example, here I have set up, this would be the pathophysiology, and this is the presentation according to first aid. What I'm trying to do next is I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can I connect these facts together? Is there a way that I can try to explain how the pathophysiology would relate to the presentation? Now, obviously you can't always do this, but you should always try. And the reason is that you'll be able to remember it better, you'll use the information more effectively, and when they change the details that you're going to see on your test, you're going to get them right more often. So I'm going to try to connect these facts together. Now, the fact that this is the middle meningeal artery, right? The fact that it's an arterial source of blood plays into this, right? Because there is a high pressure in the arterial system that is going to lead to a faster expansion of blood in the skull, which then it makes sense why you would have this rapid deterioration due to the hematoma expansion. My guess is, and again, this is just a guess, but my guess is that the reason why there's this transient loss of consciousness is that the amount of trauma necessary to damage the middle meningeal artery is going to be higher, right? Because it's an artery, so it has a pretty thick elastic layer as opposed to veins, which tend to be more fragile. And so that initial trauma may cause problem with consciousness because, again, you have this problem of actual trauma to the brain. You recover as the brain recovers, but then very quickly this hematoma is expanding, and as it expands, it compresses the brain and then causes a further reduction or a sort of renewed reduction in cerebral function, which is why you'll have this rapid sort of deterioration of cerebral functioning. So that's my guess. So I'm gonna put that here. So I'm gonna say rupture middle meningeal artery, presumably from a relatively strong force, which may also lead to the transient loss of consciousness which leads to recovery. So you have this lucid interval, and then rapid deterioration due to hematoma expansion, presumably rapid because of the increased pressure of the arterial system, right? And this is compared to, say, a subarterial hematoma, which would be venous, which would be veins, right? The bridging veins going to, say, the superior sagittal sinus. Because it's the venous system, the pressure is going to be lower. So it would make sense that those present over a much longer time frame than, say, an epidural hematoma. The back of my card now has basically combined these two ideas, right? So now instead of having two different cards where I'm asking separately the pathophysiology and separately the presentation and just kind of having to memorize those two things, I've now spent the time to try to make sense of them and connect them, which allows me to A, reduce in half the number of cards that I'm making, and B, allow me to remember that information and use it more effectively, because now I've actually made sense of it. And I could, even if I wanted to, I could say, I could make this a reverse card just as I had before, and I could say something like this. I could say condition. Now, we'll go over in the future how to make even better cards than this, but again, this is just a brief guide to get you started. If, again, you're feeling overwhelmed by this, just focus on making the basic cards that you may have seen in the past. So the next thing we're gonna do is, we just made our first flashcard, so now we need to know how to review it. So in order to review your cards, you're going to click on the deck in which you made the cards, and you're gonna hit study now. And so all you do is, you see the question, so it says epidural hematoma presentation. And I can say it out loud, I can say it in my head, but really I should now prompt myself to come up with the answer to this question. So the presentation of an epidural hematoma is oftentimes a transient loss of consciousness, followed by the lucid interval, and then followed by rapid deterioration of consciousness due to the epidural hematoma expanding quickly. And so once I've said the answer, I would check to see if it was correct. I would hit show answer, and then I would see, like, was this correct? Now, a lot of people will, as a recovering perfectionist, when I first started, was very, very strict about how much I would need to remember of each of the cards. So for example, if I forgot like even a word sometimes, I would say, oh, I didn't get that correct. And I would make myself do it again. I've seen kind of the opposite, where people will they'll just click just to see the card, and they won't even test themselves actively on using Anki. I don't think either of those two really are very effective, because in my case, where I was a perfectionist, I ended up reviewing a lot of cards unnecessarily. The other extreme, where you have people who are just clicking through the Anki cards just to click through them, typically that doesn't work very well, because they aren't really actively testing themselves on the material. So instead, what I recommend is, if you get the general idea, then I would hit good. So there's different options that you have here at the bottom. You've got again, which means that you're saying, oh, I don't really know that material very well, I need to see this again. So which also, for cards that you've reviewed multiple times, it will reset the intervals so that it'll act as if it's a new card that you're seeing for the first time. You've got other options, which are going to be hard, good, or easy. The hard option is one where it will show it to you sooner. Good is kind of the default. It's actually the one that I would recommend that most people hit most of the time. And then you've also got easy, which again, I typically don't use very often. I typically recommend that people just hit good, since that, I think, for the vast majority of us, is what works best. And so when you're first reviewing the cards and you hit good, it's going to show it to you again in less than 10 minutes, and then you just keep going until you're done. So I would say epidural hematoma, use the pathophysiology to explain the presentation. So we just went over this, but it's basically, you've got this trauma to the pterion, which is a very specific part of the brain, and you're going to have a rupture of the meningeal artery, which is a high pressure system. And so that sort of high degree of force can lead to a transient loss of consciousness, which you can recover from and have the lucid period. But as that blood accumulates because of the high pressure arterial bleed, then you can rapidly have deterioration, further deterioration, or sort of renewed deterioration of your consciousness, which is characteristic of epidural hematoma. So I did show again. I would go through very quickly and say, like, okay, did I get it? And then if I did, then I would say good. For those of you that are curious, oftentimes I know it. I typically know that I know it. And so typically I'm actually not reading too much of the answer explanation, because I know if I understood it or not. If I don't understand it, I typically will know it before I even look at the answer. And so typically I'm actually not spending a ton of time reading my answers, which is another way that you can cut down on the amount of time that you're spending on your cards. It's also a pretty good way of testing yourself to see if your cards are really just memorizing random facts, where you have to sort of read all of it on the back to make sure that you're memorizing all the details. If instead you're focused on the big picture ideas and the connections between them, typically you will find that you don't need to spend so much time memorizing and reviewing those cards word by word. So hit good. And so again, this is showing me the reverse cards. And so this would be, of course, epidural hematoma, I would hit good. And then epidural hematoma, I would hit good. And so it shows the first time that you see a card, it's going to show it to you twice by default. And so I would see these cards again, and I would go through, right? I would obviously be seeing them again, and I would hit good, and then I would hit good, and then hit good. And then I hit good. Great. So now when I'm done, I see this screen that says, congratulations, you've now finished this deck for now. And this is what you are trying to do every single day. And so if you watched our previous video, which we'll link here, you should have seen the default Anki settings where we talked about how many new cards you should be doing per day and how many old cards you should be doing. But basically the punchline is that regardless of what you've set your new cards or old cards to every day, you should be looking for this screen. The congratulations, you finished this deck for now, because for the Anki algorithm to work effectively, you need to make sure that you're doing all of the cards that you're supposed to be reviewing that particular day on that particular day. What this also is a reminder of is how important it is to do your cards every single day. It's easier to do something always than it is to do something maybe 99 or 98% of the time. So for example, even on the days that I took step 1 or step 2 or step 3, on the day that I got married, on every single day of my honeymoon, I actually made sure that I was doing my cards. And the reason for that is that if you give yourself that out of, hey, you know, today is the exception, then you add this extra emotional stress of having to make that decision every single time something comes up. Whereas if you set the expectation both for yourself and for others of, hey, I'm going to do my cards no matter what, then people just sort of accept it and you accept it, and you just try to find time to do your cards, and you figure out ways of doing cards in advance. So there are ways of studying in advance so that you don't have to do nearly so many cards on an important day if you know it's coming. And there you have it. Your first steps towards mastering Anki and scoring higher in less time. Remember, Anki is a powerful tool that, when used effectively, can be truly life-changing. But like any tool, it requires practice and dedication to yield the best results. If you want to dive deeper into advanced Anki techniques, be sure to click on the related video here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.